sailing home again, across the sea. I am sailing stormy waters to be near you, to be free. I am flying, I am flying like a bird across the sky. Passing high clouds to be near you, to be free. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Through the dark night, far away. I am dying. Forever crying to be with you. Who can say? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Through the dark night, far away. I am dying. Forever crying to be with you. Who can say?
Good morning. I'm Jeff's eldest son, David. I'd like to welcome everyone here, young, old, and those that can't or won't remember their age. We as a family are so honoured that you are here, these relatives and friends who've come here for this celebration of my father's life. We are also deeply appreciative for those that have come from interstate, and there's quite a few. But, Queensland, beautiful one day, bit dodgy the next, yes. So some housekeeping, so please remember to silence your phones. And then, I better check. And remember, after the service, we're going up the hill to the terrace lounge for some refreshments, some bubbles, and just talk about Dad, I hope. So I'll be guiding the order of service today and providing some biography of Dad's quite full life. Mum was saying the other day that she was always surprised when she went to events like this, that she learnt something surprising or something new about the person concerned. And I hope that's the case today. Before we go any further, Mum just wanted to let you know that she's been overwhelmed with the love, support and generosity and appreciation that she has received in the last week. There's been tremendous comfort to her. Dad was always a gentle and caring husband, father and friend. He was unconditionally supportive of all our endeavours and especially proud of our achievements. He was always helpful, almost to a fault. His personal motto was, treat others as you would have them treat you, and he repeated this to me many times. My sister Amber will expand on his many qualities later, I'm sure. To start off proceedings, please listen to Dad's granddaughters, Holly and Kit, who brought him so much happiness as they read a poem selected by Mum for Poppy, as he was known to them.
When a man dies, he is not dead. He has merely changed his world instead. His vision may become that of a tall tree, looking out in all directions at once.
His vision may become that of a tiny ant, with his nose as his horizon. His vision may include the voice of stars or the humming song of leaves. Who knows?
In this world, a man can also be the warm breath of the summer wind, or the comforting blanket of winter snow.
In this world, a man who is a raven is also a man who is a stone. Each living thing has lived here before, the bird, the tree, the man.
Why fear this change of worlds, my friend? Your courage travels with you, your example is left behind, so that others may know the sweetness of your time.
Thank you, nieces. I love you to pieces. When Dad was a schoolboy, he spent a lot of his time in rural Victoria with many of his aunts and uncles. He had 15,000 of them. He loved being on the farm so much that he eventually got his own property up at St Albans in partnership with Peter and Ann Wall. Peter was another Qantas pilot, and Ann's here today, and we're so grateful for that because she's a special friend for Mum, and thanks to David and Kathy for bringing her. After school, Dad started an engineering diploma, an aircraft engineering diploma. He was then called up for NASHO, National Service, and was initially sent to Point Cook, and he was then selected for flight training. He was very proud of his first solo on a Tiger Moth at the age of 19 and a half years. The next year, on the 4th of May 1958, he got his wings. So while he was in the RAF, he flew quite an assortment of aeroplanes, such as the Wheelaway and the Chipmunk, some multi-engine props such as the Lincoln, the Dakota and the Hercules, and he even got some time on jets, such as the Canberra and the Vampire. He told me that the Vampire was funny to fly because when you take off, your ass is 6 inches above the ground. During his time in the RAF, he survived a quite serious praying in a DC-3 up in Papua New Guinea. He wasn't the captain, but he broke his collarbone. And is that right, Mum? You only found out about it in the newspapers. And then he grew a red beard, which was to more of your horror, was that? So next to speak is mon oncle, Mum's brother, Dad's brother-in-law, Brett Hart.
I'm going to read it. It's been said that giving a eulogy can be a little daunting. However, I'd like to think the opposite as we gather here today to honour Geoff's memory and celebrate his very considerable life and achievements. In following on from Kit and Holly, I'd like to cover the early days of Sandra and Geoff through the eyes of a teenage Brett in suburban Camberwell in Melbourne, where we lived. It's been about 65 years since he first came into our lives, and as a brother-in-law, it is of note that Geoff was an only child, and as I did not have a brother, in a way that filial gap was filled with his arrival on the scene. He would have had some opposition taking out Sandra, as I remember one of her beaux, Campbell McLaren, had a wonderful Elvis car with headlights as big as dinner plates. The most beautiful thing. Anyway, Geoff won. I think Geoff met Sandra at the famous Sunday night dance at Powerhouse Rowing Club on Albert Park Lake in Melbourne. Pardon me, I've got a little bit of flu. The club had been in financial difficulty, and with 6 p.m. closing in those days, the social scene was dismal. Most dances were held in town halls, requiring suit and tie and best frock for the ladies, so a wonderful opportunity for the club to run their Sunday night dance, which became the most popular evening in Melbourne and featured notable artists such as The Seekers, Dave Allen, Helen Reddy and Lana Cantrell. I can recall Saturday afternoons with Sandra and our mum crouched over the Singer sewing machine, concentrating on pins, patterns, chalk, scissors and material to construct the next outfit. Into this atmosphere arrived Geoff. Now, I've put down here that he was an art student. Dave said he was an engineering student, but I always thought he was in arts. But
I think he spent more time in the arts.
well, yeah. Anyway, I go on. I thought he was an art student at RMIT, but wearing as favoured by, this is my little note here, wearing as favoured by artists and the youth counterculture of the day, a wonderful camel hair duffel coat, which went with his equally wonderful MGTC. He drew a neat sketch of the TC in my autograph book with the note, "Hope you get one too." Those were the actual words all that time ago, which I eventually did, albeit an MGB with wind-up windows, so not considered a real MG by the purists. As a teenager at the time, I was a little bit wild, and Geoff was a stabilising influence on me, particularly when I was arranging parties on my father's boat during their absence on holidays. Now, this is very true. It was a case of fessing up to the olds and being grounded for several months, and lesson was well learnt. When Geoff joined the RAF, Dave covered this, but when he joined the RAF, he trained at Point Cook. And I believe he was one of the last sergeant pilots to graduate. As a teenager, I thought it was pretty cool having a pilot in the family, as did our father, which built on our father's service as a squadron leader during the war. His cousin, Rex Boyden, was a pilot of the ill-fated Stinson airliner, which was forced down by atrocious weather in the McPherson Ranges in 1937 and subsequently located by Bernard O'Reilly. Cameron, of course, becomes the third generation in command of Dash 8 turboprops with Qantas Link up in Cairns. At one stage, Geoff offered to take me up in a trainer, which I'm pretty sure was a Chipmunk, at Moorabbin Airport, where we did a series of loops, rolls and vertical banks, which I found fabulous, but perhaps outside the air regs of the day. I think it might have been, actually. During this time, Geoff rebuilt the kitchen at our house in Fairmont Avenue, much to our delight, and luxury of luxuries, knocked a doorway from the laundry into what was formerly our outside toilet. That was real luxury. After Sand and Geoff's marriage ceremony, which was held in the church vestry, as she was from MLC and he was from Xavier, where mixed marriages were frowned upon by the church, I have to own up to a reconnoitre of the marital bed in Scott's Hotel in Collins Street, which I maintain was due to a slight overindulgence with Pym's #1 cup. It was all in good fun. Dave covered this, but San and Jeff were transferred by the RAF to Richmond Air Base and lived at Blacktown, where Dave was born, until Jeff ultimately joined Qantas. Around this time, the house at Hunters Hill was purchased, and while still vacant, Jeff kindly allowed a few of our crew from Point Leo Surf Club to camp whilst competing at the Australian titles at Collaroy. That's such an adventure for us as teenagers coming up to Sydney. There's too much history with San and Jeff and the children for me to cover here. However, I know that David, Cam and Amber would say that Jeff was the best ever dad they could have wished for, which of course goes for Poppy's Kit and Holly as well. For my sister Jan and me, much kindness and giving over the years, particularly to Jan when she bought her first house in Tennyson Road, Gladesville, and then there was the farm at St Albans, where my wife Jill and I spent our honeymoon, and the history of the farm cannot pass without mention of Jeff's parents Tom and Dell and daughter Rachel, and the Wars, farm partners Peter and Anne and family, David and Kath, complete with horses, floats, floods, planting of poplar plantations, creek crossings, and a succession of four-wheel drive Jeeps and Land Rovers. San and Jeff ultimately moved to Queensland, having fallen in love with the property at Gilston, and then on to Ashmore, and finally to the purpose-chosen house at Varsity Lakes, sharing many experiences over the years, both ups and downs, but for us, it was our memorable Queensland holidays with them over the years. We'll miss Jeff's warm hospitality and his wise counsel on so many subjects, and he will be fondly remembered. An absolute privilege to have had him in our lives.
Thank you, Brett. That was fantastic. And apologies for his sister sniggering during that presentation. So, Dad left the RAAF to join Qantas in August of 1963. As he started as a second officer on Boeing 707s, and as Brett's covered, we moved to Hunters Hill at that time. The family also had some postings from Qantas, so we went to Hong Kong for several months, and then we went to San Francisco from 1966 to 1968. And that was the year of the space race, and the US was in the thrall of that. And typical of Dad's ingenuity, he made us, do you remember this, Cameron? That space capsule, and we lay back in it and we're flicking knobs. It was just amazing. So after returning to Australia, Dad was then granted command on 707s in 1970. He gained further promotion in senior check and line captain positions. He also took on the role of Qantas Manager Flight Safety, where he discovered that being a manager in an office environment was quite different from being a manager like a captain on an aeroplane. As Qantas phased out the 707, Dad started flying 747s. He told me that this was the best plane he'd ever flown. Although he did have one particularly hairy moment when approaching Los Angeles, and he lost 2 engines on approach. They landed the plane with the 2 engines, and there was discovered a faulty fuel pump was the cause. Dad retired from Qantas in 1992, and then for some months after that, he did some contract flying for Air New Zealand, ferrying Indonesians to Mecca for the Hajj. Now, all the music you hear today, Dad listened to. He'd be in his office painting or studying for a licence renewal, and he'd put some of this music on. There's so much more music that he listened to. He also bought some records from the Shuttleworth collection, and these records had recordings of aeroplanes taxiing, had planes flying from left speaker to the right speaker. And so some of my friends were very bemused when they came to visit and they walked past his office and heard these aeroplanes, or even trains going. So now we're going to have a photographic montage with some music. Thank you. glad you enjoyed that. For you, very good price. So, after Dad left Qantas, they were technically retired, and then they said they've never been busier. So Dad was not one to rest on his laurels. He was then invited to be on the board of CASA, which is the Civil Aviation and Safety Authority, where he did a memorable trip to post-Yeltsin Russia. And he told me the story that it's a classic Aeroflot story that he was given a cup of coffee on Aeroflot in a plastic mug that had bite marks in it. Dad still wanted to fly, so he bought an old US Stearman trainer, which is a biplane, that he wanted to renovate and perhaps actually fly. And he kept it, built a special shed up at Nerang for it, and the wings were here, the fuselage was there. But unfortunately, due to health issues and the unavailability of a suitable engine, he had to move it on. But he was very pleased when that buyer eventually got it up in the air in Western Australia. Dad also did some volunteer work for the Coast Guard down at Broadwater, and then he was also a volunteer on the replica Endeavour when it came to the Gold Coast. Now, this has been a very important part of their social life since then, and that's Mum and Dad got invited to join Friendship Force. And I got this off Wikipedia. It's an international organisation committed to improving intercultural relations via homestays. They loved hosting, they loved visiting, and they went to many places, and they met some very wonderful and interesting people there. And it's been a wonderful friendship group for them, and I think there's quite a few of you here today. So, also, Dad also came to meet some like-minded individuals, and they would meet every week. He always wanted Cam and I to come with him when we were there. Neil is from that group, and he's going to say some words now. Thanks, Neil.
Well, I must say, first off, I love the sound of a Merlin engine going past. So I've delegated, I'm part of a Thursday weekly group we call it our boardroom meeting. Every Thursday where we discuss global and local events and offer our opinions, and we try and solve the problems of the world. Our small group comes from all walks of life, from pharmacy, motor vehicle industry, defence, RAF and Qantas, commercial real estate management, manufacturing and fabrication, heavy construction project management. Jeff was an integral member of this group, where his sharp-minded knowledge of current affairs, along with his opinions, were valued immensely. We enjoyed his jokes, his funny experiences for his many trips and landings as a Qantas pilot, and his earlier time in the RAF. One time when I mentioned that my partner Judy was holidaying in the Cook Islands, Jeff responded immediately. He said about the tricky landing approach necessary to land safely at Rarotonga. Jeff mentioned that it was always early in the mornings, whichever way they were flying in or flying back. It was always early in the mornings that they were landing into the early morning sun. So they would prepare for this landing more than an hour out, which is unusual. It became harder for Jeff to attend the Thursday boardroom meetings as we all age, and in recent years, Tom picked up Jeff, or even Cam came along, and then Sandra brought Jeff along to the meetings, and Sandra read a book in the corner for a couple of hours while we chatted away, and Jeff participated in our conversations. Jeff and I had a passion for history, especially if aircraft were involved, and we thoroughly enjoyed my Flight Path and Flight Pass magazines, which I loaned him in recent years when books, we used to exchange a lot of books over the years, became too much for Jeff. We'll all miss Jeff, and our group will sadly miss his worldly view on global and local events. Now, I've got a few more words from Rick. Rick Culprit is from Defence, and he and Rick, Jeff and Rick were very, very close. Rick, and as well as Dave Arter, who's at Trinity Beach, can't make it today. He'll catch up with Cam shortly. So hello Neil, a few pointers I'd like to make out to raise referring to our mate Jeff. Jeff has had a treasured memory in my recollection. He arrived in our little group about 30 years ago and brought with him wonderful memories from his flying days. He's just retired from Qantas and was full of news. When we were that much younger, we all had much more vigour and enthusiasm. Jeff brought a wonderful and mature view of the news of the day. I enjoyed immensely our discussions on the news of the day and in particular the early Trump years. He had a mature and balanced approach to matters that I found most welcome. Our time together was invariably with others in our little group on Thursdays, and we are mindful of others in our group. I treasure the memory of Jeff. Of course, he had also had a very complete history of aircraft from the Korean War and since. With his depth and knowledge, he was most entertaining with these escapades of places that he had visited. In more recent times, Cam was a frequent visitor with Jeff, and that he was in good hands, and he also assimilated into our group, become a long-standing member. Thanks, Cam. In more recent days, Sandra was there to ensure Jeff got our shared time together, and he got to feel a part of our group. He was always felt a part of the group. Sandra was a vital link between Jeff and our group, and we express our thanks and appreciation for her efforts in the later days. From us, we've lost a treasured friend of many years, and our thoughts are with Sandra, David, Cam and Amber. I have one more. I've just got to find it. This is the first time I'm using a phone rather than reading out notes, so I'm trying to be modern. This is from Tom Hamilton Foster, who's here today. I first met Jeff in 2009 when I was invited to join with others for weekly drinks at the Southport Yacht Club. So we had known each other for some 17 years, but perhaps you could call it just a few short years. As it turned out, he had known an uncle of mine when they were both in the Air Force. My uncle, I think, tested life to the fullest, and some of the stories Jeff told me were indeed most interesting. He had so many positive attributes that I believe a good general description of him was that he was a good man. I'm always amazed by what he would talk about in the car park, particularly going to and from the Emerald Lakes Golf Club, where we moved from Southport to Emerald Lakes on a Thursday afternoon. He had a general but deep knowledge of world and Australian events, both political and general in nature. I'm sure that he did get a lot of pleasure out of reading the press articles that he did. How many times did he bring books for others? That's me. Just thought they would be interested in reading them. One comment he made I will never forget. Did you see the Johannes Leek cartoon in the Australian today? It is really clever, and I think he is better cartoonist than his father, Bill Leek. From this, I knew he appreciated the ability of a cartoonist to get the message across. Not that many months ago, we were driving back from our weekly board meeting, and we always called it the board meeting, at the golf club, and he made a general comment about the fact that you don't stop learning. Of course, my comment was, "What do you mean?" And then he asked me a question. "Do you know what the blue colour is on the horizon?" I had no idea, so the answer came back. It is the shadow of the earth on the horizon made by the sun. I had no idea that he explained it, but he explained it to me, and I was really thankful that he did. Finally, it was a privilege to know Jeff and his immediate family. We are all richer for his friendship.
Thank you so much, Neil, for that, and the boardroom. So every family should have a nurse in it, and we're fortunate that we have two. And I'd like to especially thank my sister-in-law, Kathy there and my aunt Janet for their continual medical advice and help over the years, especially as Dad deteriorated in the last few years. So we're very grateful for that. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank our St Lucia Court neighbours Paul and Pauline. I don't think they're able to make it today. They've given so much help and trifles to Mum and Dad. Mum has asked to express special gratitude to Tanya the physio, who had been treating Dad for so long, and to Annie the community nurse, and Jenny from ProCare, who've been helping her so much recently. She also would like to thank the Hinterland Medical Centre. And now it's time for Amber to speak. She was so close to Dad and she'll have a lot to say.
I'm going to put my glasses on for this so I don't miss anything, but these are just my words and my relationship that I had with Dad. So, Hume Geoffrey Molloy, Hume to some, Jeff to most. Poppy to granddaughter Holly, and Poppy Alloy to Kit, my daughter, who, that was her way of pronouncing Molloy. Dad, you were my foundation, my rock, always watching over us. Many of you here today will have been touched by Dad's welcoming nature and genuine interest in you. Softly spoken, kind, a true gentleman, generous in all ways, with his time, with his advice, with his conversation. So much so that at social gatherings, when it was time to go home, Mum would have to wait as Dad went round the room saying goodbyes. 30 minutes of farewells later, and Mum would turn and say, "Where's your father?" Growing up in Hunters Hill was the best. I went to Woolwich Public School across the road, literally on our doorstep. Weekends were spent going to the farm at St Albans, open fires, tractor rides, horses, crisp mornings, picking mulberries off the mulberry tree. Mum would bake them into a delicious pie. School holidays were spent travelling locally and overseas, often with Dad flying the plane. Europe, St Peter's, the Colosseum, gondola rides, America, Universal Studios, Disneyland, skiing in Canada, wandering through the markets in Bangkok. It was a really beautiful childhood. Dad insisted that I was in the cockpit for the landing into Tokyo at night because he wanted me to experience the city lights, which was amazing. So probably think something that you can't do today. Always the captain when and if problems arose in life. Dad would be calm and steadfast, and I knew I could talk to him day or night, and I could talk through with him anything that was troubling me, and he would say, "Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it." So he was always very calm. This approach meant he taught me to be resourceful, make like MacGyver. Dad taught me how to drive, how to change a tyre, pack the perfect suitcase for travel, where the weighted items were on the bottom and the light items were at the top. Very important. Kathy's laughing because he also packed the dishwasher, so you can imagine how that went as well. I was like, you don't put the knives like that. So very, very particular. He also taught us to check where the emergency exits were on the plane, and also all the exits at all the hotels we stayed into. Always best to have an evacuation plan. So, as a teenager, I was lucky to accompany Dad on his second last trip for his retirement. It was Sydney, Honolulu, Tahiti, Los Angeles, Sydney, so it was pretty great. On our first stop, we arrived at our hotel accommodation, and I was thrilled to see 2 queen-size beds, an upgrade from my single bed at home, and I jumped on the bed closest to the main door with delight, and Dad said, "No, I want you to sleep on the bed furthest from the door," reason being, if an intruder was to come in, he would be there to protect me. So I still do that to Kit, my daughter, today, so all of these things flow through us. Dad and I shared a sweet tooth, and as a child, going out to dinner at a restaurant was a very exciting occasion. We generally cross-checked the dessert menu first, because this was very important. We'd make our selection, chocolate mousse, cream caramel, and then we'd move on to our main meal, and after we'd decided, we obviously had our priorities in order. Dad made a mean trifle. Most Christmases were spent as a family on the Gold Coast, with Holly and Kit helping to construct the perfect ratio of layers of sponge, jelly to fruit cream and custard. It was delicious, so thank you, girls. Dad wore many hats. He was extremely capable. He could fix most broken things, and he built things. He actually told me, "Oh, I was very impressed as a child. You took apart a pepper grinder, fixed it and put it back together again." He thought that was fantastic. So when we moved to Nerang, we had a very deep swimming pool, and Dad said to me, "Would you like a diving board or would you like a slippery slide into the pool?" Very blessed we were. So Dad proceeded to construct a wooden frame and slippery slide into the pool, which my friends and I enjoyed for many years to come, and two of them are here. Gina, Pete, hello. So it was a fantastic time growing up in Nerang. Dad also came to Sydney when Bongie and I were renovating our retail shop in Newtown, and he was busy patching walls, painting, whilst making regular trips to Corelli's Cafe to drink coffee and people watch, because that was Dad all over. He loved doing that. Dad was a talented artist. Art was his sideline passion. I too share that creative streak. Dad was asked to illustrate the All Saints Anglican calendar as a fundraiser. With his sense of humour, Dad put pen to paper and a range of fabulous cartoons emerged. We had some of them on the images, and there'll be the calendar at the Terrace Lounge afterwards. Dad's series of tall ships were of particular interest to him. They were very detailed, and David, Cameron and I each have a painting, framed painting that we have. This more so than ever in Dad's last week. Dad and I shared a Bluetooth connection. We had a deep caring that didn't need to be spoken. It was mutually understood. It was a culmination of all the love and memories that we'd shared over the years. I would like to thank my beautiful mum, Sandra, for her love and support and being Dad's carer so that he could stay at home. For all the home-cooked meals and for ferrying Dad to all of his appointments. Also to my brothers, David and Cameron, and to Kathy for their constant support of Mum and Dad over the years. Dad, you were and always will be my hero in life. They say you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. Thank you for choosing me. I love you, Dad.
Thanks, Emma. That's beautiful. Dad did do a painting for me because I came home from England, and I said, "Oh, I'd like one of those." And 2 weeks later, before I left, he presented it with me, and it's on my wall at home now. So before we conclude, and Amber touched on this, and although she just wants to take the back seat and fly under the radar, I must make a special mention of someone truly amazing. And that's my mother, Sandra. You cannot mention Jeff without Sandra. You cannot have Sandra without Jeff. They were married for 66 years. They faced some of the stiffest challenges life could throw at them, and together they came out the other side. The dedication, devotion, and resilience you showed, caring for Dad, particularly over the last year as age and Parkinson's took its dreadful toll of him, is just unbelievable. Please be assured, as you regather, that Amber, Cam and I will be there for you in the next chapter of your life. It is also important to let everyone know that, as Amber was saying, the family were able to be with Dad before he died. We were able to sit with him, talk to him, give him a drink and hold his hand. Mum and Amber took turns staying at the hospital with him overnight. He was fully aware that we were there with him till the end. So as many of you know, I lived in England, and I'd come home regularly once or twice a year and see the family. But when it came time to leave, Dad would always come out, stand in the driveway and watch me go down that driveway, I suppose. He'd always stand there. It was his way of letting us know that he didn't want you to go. I'd never make it to the end of the driveway without being a teary mess. That didn't matter whether I was going to Heathrow or Sydney. So Dad, it's time for Mum, Amber, Cameron and I, Lee and Kit, to now take our turn to stand at the end of the driveway, to wave you off, to show that we will miss you, that we don't want you to go, though you must, and that we love you. So thank you much, Dad.
We got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. We've been talking about Jackson ever since the fire went out. I'm going to Jackson, I'm gonna mess around. Yeah, I'm going to Jackson, look out Jackson Town.
Well, go on down to Jackson, go ahead and wreck your health. Go play your hand, you big talking man, make a big fool of yourself. Yeah, go to Jackson, but go comb that hair.
I'm gonna snowball Jackson,
Go ahead and see if I care.
when I breeze into that city, people gonna stoop and bow. All them women gonna make me teach them what they don't know how. I'm going to Jackson, you turn loose of my coat, 'cause I'm going to Jackson.
Goodbye, that's all she wrote. They'll laugh at you in Jackson,
I doubt it.
and I'll be dancing on a pony keg. They'll lead you round that town like a scalded hound, with your tail tucked between your legs. Yeah, go to Jackson, you big talking man, and I'll be waiting there in Jackson, behind my J-Pan plan.
We got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. We've been talking about Jackson ever since the fire went out. Go to Jackson, and that's a natural fact. We're gone to Jackson, ain't never coming back. We got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. We've been talking about